You think you're behind? No, baby, you're just loading. Don't confuse a detour with defeat. Because some of the strongest souls, they took the longest routes and still arrived like royalty. And let me tell you something raw and real. There's no timeline, no deadline, and definitely no rule book. This isn't a race, this is your runway. So walk it like you own it. Comparison is the fastest way to kill confidence. Not because you aren't good enough, but because you're measuring your worth on someone else's scale. And that scale? It's broken. It's built on filters, illusions, and highlights that never show the full story. We scroll through social media watching perfect couples, luxury vacations, dream jobs, and think, why not me? But do you see their insecurities, their breakdowns, their silent battles? No. Because comparison is a thief that only shows you the gold, never the dirt beneath it. Imagine you're running a marathon. You're focused, you're consistent, you're pacing yourself. And then suddenly you glance sideways. Someone else is faster. Your heart skips. You push harder, not because it's your pace, but because you're scared of being behind. Now you're gasping for breath, losing control, off balance. Why? Because the moment you looked away from your path and onto theirs, you disconnected from your purpose. Confidence doesn't come from overtaking someone. It comes from mastering your own lane. A girl studies fashion, loves creating things, but sees her friends working tech jobs with six-figure salaries. She starts doubting her passion, wondering if she chose wrong. She forgets that what lights her up is art, not code. So she forces herself into a life that looks good on paper but feels empty inside. That's what comparison does. It distracts you from the fire in your soul and pushes you towards someone else's flame. And here's the truth. Even if you walk into their light, it will never feel warm. Because it wasn't meant for you. There's a guy at the gym, lifting weights, improving slowly. Then he sees someone next to him, ripped, flawless form, perfect body. Suddenly everything he was proud of disappears. He doesn't see the hours that man spent, the years of consistency, the setbacks he fought through. He just sees the result. And that's where confidence dies. When we compare our day 1 to someone else's year 5. You can't microwave greatness. You can't rush mastery. And you can't measure growth through someone else's mirror. A mother raises her kids with love, working 2 jobs, sacrificing sleep, skipping vacations. But then she sees another mom on Instagram baking perfect cookies, doing yoga, smiling with picture-perfect kids in matching outfits. For a moment, she feels like she's not enough. But what she doesn't see is the nanny behind the scenes, the fights not captured on camera, the breakdowns hidden behind the smiles. Social media is not a window, it's a stage, and everyone's performing. Don't lose your peace trying to match someone else's script. There's a student who scores average grades. He's creative, he questions things, he's curious. But his cousin tops every exam, wins awards, and becomes the family's golden child. Slowly, his light dims. Not because he lacks potential, but because comparison told him he wasn't special. In reality, he's a future entrepreneur, an innovator. But school doesn't measure that. Just like fish can't climb trees, you can't expect your path to look like everyone else's. Confidence dies when we start believing that value is only defined by someone else's scoreboard. Even in relationships, you see couples flaunting anniversaries, gifts, grand gestures. You start looking at your partner differently. Why doesn't he post about me? Why doesn't she plan surprises? You start poisoning something beautiful just because it doesn't look like someone else's version of love. But maybe your love is silent, deep, powerful, not made for the camera, but for the soul. And when you compare, you stop feeling. You start performing. And love becomes a competition instead of a connection. Comparison doesn't just steal joy, it murders authenticity. It tells the singer to be an actor, the poet to be a banker, the mother to be a supermodel, and the child to be someone else's dream. It tricks you into believing you're not enough unless you match the highlight reel of others. But the irony, the ones you compare yourself to, they're comparing themselves to someone else too. And it never ends. It's a race with no finish line, just more exhaustion, more doubt, more self-hate. Talent doesn't mean denial, it means preparation. It means protection. It means something is being orchestrated for you behind the scenes that you cannot yet see. And sometimes your timeline gets stretched, not because you're forgotten, but because the blessing is too big to be rushed. You don't put a diamond in the microwave. It needs pressure, time, and fire to shine. Your life is the same. There's a girl who's been waiting for love. She sees her friends getting engaged, posting romantic getaways, planning weddings, and she begins to wonder, what's wrong with me? But what she doesn't see is that her journey requires solitude to build strength. The universe is not ignoring her, it's refining her, because the love that's coming isn't basic, it's not average, it's extraordinary. And extraordinary takes time. It takes heartbreaks to build discernment. It takes healing to create wholeness. So the delay, it's not punishment, it's preparation for a love that won't require fixing, begging, or shrinking. A young man applies for job after job, no callbacks, no interviews, just rejection. Meanwhile, his peers are climbing ladders, earning titles, receiving praise. He feels stuck, invisible, left behind. But what he doesn't know is that his no isn't a door closing. It's a redirection. Because 6 months from now, a company will offer him a role that doesn't just use his skills, it values his vision. And he'll realize, had he been accepted earlier, he would have been locked into a life he would have grown to hate. The delay protected his destiny. There's a couple trying to have a child. Every month feels like a war zone of emotions. Every test result a dagger. Baby showers turn into silent reminders of what they don't have. And yet, they keep going. Not because it's easy, but because somewhere deep within, they believe that the delay is not a denial. One day they'll hold a child in their arms who is not just born, but chosen. And the love that child receives will be so overwhelming, so sacred, that the pain of waiting will finally make sense. Because what's delayed is often being designed in a way that will break every wall of your heart and flood it with grace. A student fails an exam, not once, not twice, but again and again. Their dream school slips further away, people begin to whisper, doubt creeps in like a shadow. But instead of giving up, they go inward. They study deeper. They learn patience. They develop grit. And finally, when they pass, they don't just walk into a classroom. They walk in with a spirit that can never be broken. The delay taught them resilience. And that resilience becomes the very thing that carries them through every storm. A woman launches a business. She works day and night, sacrifices weekends, skips luxuries, invests everything she has. Yet the growth is slow. Sales are low, and again people start to question, maybe it's not meant for you. But what they don't see is what she's building under the surface. Loyalty, authenticity, purpose. 2 years later, a viral moment takes her to the world stage. And suddenly she's not just running a business, she's leading a movement. The delay didn't deny her success. It deepened her foundation so success wouldn't crush her when it finally came. You are not meant to be understood by everyone, and that is your superpower, not your flaw. The world doesn't need 1,000 versions of the same voice. It needs your chaos, your questions, your uniqueness. Not everyone will get you, and that's not a sign to change. It's a sign that you're standing in truth that makes people uncomfortable. Remember this. Some people will judge your fire simply because they're scared to light their own. There's a girl who dreams of living alone, building a business and traveling the world instead of settling down early like her peers. Her aunt says, "You're too ambitious. Men won't like that." Her friends joke, "You're too much, slow down." But in her heart she knows. She wasn't born to be tamed. She wasn't built to follow scripts written by others. She's misunderstood not because she's lost, but because she's ahead of her time. The world hasn't caught up to her yet. But she walks anyway, because pioneers are always misunderstood until they become legends. There's a boy who cries during movies, writes poetry about sunsets, and finds joy in silence. His classmates call him soft, weird, too emotional. So he pretends, he puts on a mask, but every time he denies himself he feels a little more hollow. Then one day he reads a poem out loud and someone in the back of the room cries. In that moment, he realizes he wasn't meant for everyone. He was meant for those who needed to hear him. Hey, you don't need the whole world to clap, just one heart to understand your soul. A woman walks into meetings with bold lipstick, fierce ideas, and an accent that reminds people she didn't grow up like them. They smile politely, but behind her back they whisper, "She's too loud, too confident, too much." She hears it, but she doesn't shrink, because she knows the ones who change the world are never the ones who fit in quietly. She came to make noise, not just take notes. And one day those same people will quote her words in their speeches, the same words they once mocked. Even in families, being misunderstood hurts the deepest. You decide to leave a secure job to follow your passion, and suddenly you're the disappointment. You choose healing over tradition, and now you're the rebel. But you must understand, some people love the version of you they can control, not the version of you that's free. And when you choose freedom, they will misunderstand you. Let them, because living for their approval is a prison, and you were never born to live behind bars. A teenager questions everything, religion, rules, routines, not to be difficult, but to understand truth deeply. But every time he asks why, he's labeled as disrespectful. He's not. He's just awake. The world fears those who ask questions because questions lead to clarity and clarity leads to change. So he grows up carrying a mind that doesn't settle, and one day he writes a book. That book helps millions think differently. And the same people who once called him too curious now call him a thought leader, because being misunderstood is the tax you pay for being original. Even nature teaches us this truth. The moon is misunderstood during the day. People forget it's even there. But at night, when darkness falls, it shines. Not because it changed, but because its moment arrived. You don't need to explain your path to people who can't even see the road you're on. Not everyone is supposed to get it. And thank God, because if they all did, you'd be basic, predictable, ordinary. You don't owe anyone a version of yourself that makes them feel more comfortable. Some will leave when you grow. Let them. Some will laugh when you dream. Let them. Some will misunderstand your silence, your strength, your softness. Let them. Because you are not here to be decoded by every mind. You're here to be felt by the few who truly see you. Own your pace like you own your power. The world is always rushing, a never-ending race where everyone seems to be running ahead, comparing their milestones to yours, pressuring you to keep up. But here's the truth. Your pace is yours and yours alone. It doesn't have to match anyone's timeline. It doesn't have to fit anyone's expectation. The beauty of life is that it's not a competition, it's a journey. And the only person you should be in competition with is the version of yourself you were yesterday. When you own your pace, you own your power. Take the story of a woman in her late 30s who has just started her business. Everyone around her seems to have figured out their lives. They have children, homes, stable jobs, and there she is, just beginning. She looks around and wonders if she's too late, if she's fallen behind. But then she realizes her pace is not their pace. They started when they did, and she's starting now. But both paths lead somewhere. It's never too late to start, and success doesn't have a one-size-fits-all schedule. She begins to embrace her own timeline, trusting that when the right moment comes, she'll be ready. She moves slowly but steadily, building a foundation that's solid, and one day, when everyone else is scrambling, she's the one with a flourishing empire, secure in her pace. Then there's a man in his mid-40s, struggling with his career. He looks at his peers who seem to have achieved everything by the age of 30. The promotions, the accolades, the wealth. He feels stuck. But one day, he takes a deep breath and decides to stop comparing his path to theirs. He focuses on what he can control, his work, his growth, his learning. He knows he's not in the same race, and that's okay. Instead of rushing toward an imagined finish line, he takes his time, trusting the process. Within a few years, his career takes off. But it's not because he rushed. It's because he learned to own his pace. He trusted the journey that was uniquely his, and by doing so, he built a future that wasn't based on someone else's clock. In another example, there's a young artist fresh out of college, watching all of her peers land jobs in big corporations while she is still working on her portfolio. She feels the weight of pressure to succeed fast, to prove that her art is valuable, but she's always taken a different approach. Slower, more deliberate, more thoughtful. She's not in a hurry to be recognized because she knows that true art isn't created under pressure. She focuses on perfecting her craft, on refining her skills. Years later, her work is celebrated not because she tried to follow the crowd, but because she stayed true to herself, moved at her own pace, and never sacrificed her authenticity for the sake of popularity. And think about the countless people who, in their 20s, feel the rush to settle down, get married, have children, buy a house, all the milestones that society often defines as success. But one woman in her 30s decides to travel the world instead. She spends years learning about different cultures, gathering experiences, and exploring who she is before she starts a family. Along the way, she meets people who are impressed by her independence, her confidence in taking her own time. When she does finally settle down, she doesn't feel like she missed out, because the time she spent finding herself gave her the strength to create a life that was uniquely hers. What we must realize is that when you don't rush, when you move at your own pace, you build strength in places others miss. You become resilient, adaptable, and most importantly, grounded in your own power. The power to decide when it's time to make a change, when it's time to slow down, and when it's time to speed up. Rushing to meet someone else's expectations only dilutes the power of your own journey. Own your pace, and you'll own your power. There's a peace that comes with moving in your own time. It's a quiet confidence that doesn't need to prove anything. When you're not rushing, you're learning, you're growing, you're building something real. And in the end, the world doesn't celebrate the fast or the loud. It celebrates those who are steady, those who know that their time will come. Because when it does, they will have built something solid, something lasting, and something that reflects their true self rather than a version they felt pressured to become. So let go of the comparison, the expectations, the rush to be somewhere you're not. Own your pace and watch as you step into your power, quietly, confidently, and unapologetically. Your worth was never meant to be measured in milestones. Society has convinced us that unless we're ticking boxes, graduated by 22, married by 25, we're somehow failing. But you were not born to be a checklist. You were born to be a force. And forces don't follow clocks. They shift realities. Stop thinking you're falling behind just because someone else reached their milestone before you. A flower doesn't bloom because another flower next to it did. It blooms when its roots are ready and the sun hits just right. A girl sits in her room, scrolling through her phone, seeing engagement announcements, baby showers, career awards. She's in her late 20s and still figuring it out. The world screams, you should have done more by now. But should she? Or should she take a deep breath and remind herself, my life is not a timeline, it's a masterpiece. And no one rushes a masterpiece. The Mona Lisa didn't happen overnight. Cathedrals took centuries. What she's building, her dreams, her soul, her peace, are not built with speed, but with soul. She realizes her worth isn't a milestone she can post about. It's who she is when the lights are off and the world is quiet. A man in his 40s walks into a reunion, feeling like the odd one out. His friends talk about their promotions, their stocks, their accomplishments. He listens quietly, feeling small. But what they don't know is, while they were chasing titles, he was chasing healing. While they climbed ladders, he climbed out of trauma. His journey was invisible but powerful. He looks at them, smiles and says, not all victories are loud. That one sentence silences the room. Because deep down, they know it's easy to chase medals, harder to chase meaning. And that man, he chose meaning. There's a woman who never had children, not because she couldn't, but because she didn't want to. And for years, people whispered behind her back, she'll regret it. That's what women are meant for. But she traveled the world, she mentored hundreds of girls, she built businesses, she wrote books, she loved deeply and fully. And one day, a young girl she mentored said, you made me believe I could do anything. In that moment, that woman didn't feel childless. She felt fulfilled. Because her worth was never in whether or not she had a child. It was in the legacy she built in hearts. A student fails a year in university. People whisper. Parents worry. Friends move on. And he sits with the shame of not meeting the standard. But instead of giving up, he leans into the lesson. He finds a new passion, switches majors, and starts again. He graduates 3 years later than his peers, but with a fire in his heart they never had. When he lands a job doing what he loves, he realizes something powerful. Had I graduated on time, I would have missed myself in the process. Some delays are divine detours. Your worth isn't in the degree, it's in the discovery. A mother of 3 who never had a fancy job or an Instagram-worthy life starts a small baking business from her kitchen at 50. People laugh. It's too late. But she bakes anyway. With love, with passion. One day her cakes go viral. Orders flood in. And she becomes the talk of the town. Not because she hit a milestone, but because she didn't give up on herself. The world notices what glows. Even if it takes time to light up. She shows everyone you can start again, you can shine again, and your timeline is valid, even if it begins at 50. Stop asking yourself, am I there yet? Start asking, who am I becoming? Milestones are markers, not measures. They tell you where you are, not who you are. Who you are is in the quiet decisions, the silent battles, the resilience when no one is watching. Your worth is in your courage, your kindness, your fire to keep going when the world gives you every reason to quit. You are not behind, you're becoming. Not late, you're aligned. And never forget, a diamond doesn't care how long it takes to be discovered. It just shines when it's ready. And now, breathe. Not because you've arrived at some final destination, but because you've finally realized you were never meant to rush there. You see, life is not a race. It's not a ladder to climb or a game to win. It's a dance. And some people dance fast, some slow, and some, they don't even hear the music until years later. And that's okay, because the ones who learn to enjoy the silence before the beat drops, they're the ones who dance with fire in their soul when it finally does. So what if you're not where they are? So what if you didn't marry at 25, buy a house at 30, become a millionaire at 35? Do you want a life that looks good in pictures or one that feels right in your bones? Listen to me. No one successful ever said, I made it because I copied the crowd. They made it because they dared to walk alone. The lion doesn't care about the opinion of sheep, and you, my love, weren't born to be a sheep in someone else's flock. You were born to roar, even if it makes others uncomfortable. You don't owe the world a timeline. You don't owe anyone explanations for why you're still figuring it out. The only thing you owe yourself is truth. Radical, unapologetic, burning truth. And if your truth means you're behind today to be ahead tomorrow, then so be it. Because remember this, Beyoncé didn't become Beyoncé by blending in. Oprah wasn't handed her legacy on a schedule. They rose in their time, not the world's. Stop shrinking to fit timelines that weren't written for you. Stop comparing your behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel. Instagram is not a measure of real life. Happiness is not filtered. Success is not a one-size-fits-all. And healing, growth, breakthrough, none of it runs on your Wi-Fi speed. And when people ask, why aren't you married yet? Why haven't you settled? Why are you starting over? Smile and say, because I'm building something timeless. And I'd rather take the long road to something real than the fast track to something fake. You are not too late, you are not too old, you are not too broken. You are simply becoming. And the ones who bloom late, their petals last longer, their roots run deeper, and when they finally rise, they shake the ground with every step. Maybe your story isn't meant to be a bestseller by 30. Maybe it's meant to become a classic by 50. Would you rather be a trend, or would you rather be timeless? You were never meant to be understood by everyone. You were never meant to be ordinary. So stop asking for permission. Stop waiting for signs. You are the sign. You are the answer. You are the breakthrough. And everything you've been waiting for, it's been waiting on you. Every delay was preparation. Every detour was protection. Every heartbreak was redirection. You didn't miss your moment. You were being molded for it. So own your journey with all its mess, all its magic, all its madness. Because the world doesn't need another copy, it needs your original. The world doesn't need your speed, it needs your soul. And when you walk into the room, walk like you're not just arriving. Walk like you belong there. Because you do. Say this to yourself, I may be behind today, but baby, when I rise, the world will wonder how they ever looked away. You are not a late bloomer, you are a rare bloomer. So hold your head high, speak your truth, and remember, the most powerful souls are never rushed, they are revealed. Let the world chase moments. You're building legacy.